Officer Daniels never expected his routine night patrol to turn into a life or death chase when a man brandishing a knife vanished into the shadows, testing every ounce of his skill and courage. It was a cold, quiet night in the small suburban town, the kind where most residents were tucked safely in their homes, unaware of anything unusual outside. Streetlights flickered intermittently along the narrow roads, casting long shadows across parked cars and trimmed hedges. Officer Daniels was on his usual night patrol, his cruiser moving slowly down the familiar streets. The town was usually calm, and nights like these were predictable, giving officers time to complete paperwork, check in with dispatch, and monitor minor disturbances. But this night was different. A 911 call had just come through, describing a man seen lurking near parked vehicles on Maple Street, acting strangely and carrying something in his hands. Daniel's instincts immediately heightened. The dispatcher repeated the description, warning that the man might be dangerous. Daniels felt a twinge of unease, knowing that late-night patrols often brought the unexpected, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to face. As he turned the corner onto Maple Street, the officer noticed movement under the dim light of a flickering lamp. A man stood partially concealed by a bush, shifting nervously, his eyes scanning the empty street as if expecting someone to appear. His hands were tucked inside a bulky jacket, making it impossible to see what he was holding. Every instinct Daniels had screamed that the situation could escalate at any moment. He carefully exited his cruiser, hand hovering near his radio, ready to call for backup. The man's movements grew more erratic as Daniels approached, and the tension in the air became almost tangible. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes, the quiet of the night broken only by the soft hum of the street lamp and the officer's steady footsteps on the pavement. Without warning, the man drew a knife, its blade glinting sharply in the pale light. The sudden motion startled Daniels, but he remained focused, shouting clear commands. The man ignored him entirely, his grip tight on the weapon. For a fleeting moment, it seemed the confrontation could spiral out of control in an instant. Then, almost as suddenly as he had appeared, the man turned and bolted into the darkness, racing down an alleyway that disappeared into shadow. Daniels quickly pursued, adrenaline surging. But the suspect was fast, weaving through narrow spaces and slipping past fences, leaving only the faintest traces behind. What began as a routine patrol had erupted into a high-stakes chase, one that would test Daniel's skills, courage, and endurance in ways he had never imagined. The calm of the night was gone, replaced by uncertainty and danger lurking around every corner. The suspect disappeared into the shadows with astonishing speed, his figure darting through narrow streets and alleyways as if he knew every shortcut and hiding place in the neighborhood. Officer Daniels pursued, heart pounding, but it quickly became clear that this would not be an ordinary chase. Every turn the officer took, the man seemed to anticipate it, slipping through spaces that were barely wide enough for him to pass, vaulting over fences, and moving through backyards with the agility of someone desperate and determined. The quiet night had transformed into a tense, high-stakes game, with each step measured against the unknown danger the knife-wielding man posed. Daniels kept his focus sharp, scanning for movement, listening for the faintest sounds of escape, and trying not to lose sight of the figure ahead. Dispatch crackled through the radio as backup was requested. More officers arrived quickly, positioning themselves strategically along the route, but the suspect continued to move unpredictably. Shadows from streetlights stretched across walls and pavement, creating fleeting illusions of movement that made it nearly impossible to track him. Residents peered cautiously through their windows, whispering among themselves about what was unfolding outside. Some were too afraid to move, while others risked stepping out to catch a glimpse of the chase. The streets, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a maze, every corner concealing the potential for danger. The pursuit led into an industrial area at the edge of town, where abandoned warehouses cast long, ominous silhouettes in the dim light. Here, the man slowed briefly, disappearing behind stacks of crates and rusted machinery. Daniels followed cautiously, knowing the confined space could work against him. Each step echoed eerily in the stillness, amplifying the tension. The suspect moved deliberately, using the environment to his advantage, leaving officers scrambling to predict his next move. For a brief moment, it seemed as if he might simply vanish, dissolving into the maze of shadows and alleys. Then, in an almost unbelievable turn, the man slipped into a narrow underground passage hidden behind a chain-link fence. Few residents knew of its existence. The tunnel twisted and turned beneath the streets, a labyrinth of darkness that seemed to swallow sound and light. Daniels hesitated only for a moment before following, radio in hand, knowing the chase had become far more dangerous than he could have anticipated. With each step into the tunnel, the sense of uncertainty and peril deepened. What had started as a routine night patrol had now escalated into a life-or-death pursuit through a hidden world beneath the town, and the outcome remained uncertain. The morning after the chase brought a sense of eerie quiet to the neighborhood, but for the investigators, the hunt was far from over. Officer Daniels and the team retraced every possible step the suspect could have taken, examining the alleys, streets, and industrial zones where he had been seen. The underground passage had been sealed off temporarily for evidence collection, but signs of his presence were still visible: smudges of mud on the walls, faint scuff marks on the concrete floor, and footprints that hinted at the suspect's hurried, yet calculated, escape. Each clue told a fragment of the story, a puzzle the officers were desperate to solve. They realized quickly that this man was no ordinary criminal. His movements suggested a level of planning and awareness that was unsettling. Among the recovered items was a discarded backpack found near a hidden exit of the tunnel. Inside, investigators discovered a torn identification card, several small notes with seemingly random scribbles, and a knife sheath that did not match the weapon brandished during the chase. These remnants painted a fragmented picture of someone living on the edge, someone who had considered every possible scenario and prepared for escape. Analysts began piecing together the suspect's history, which revealed a series of minor offenses: petty thefts, trespassing, and fleeting run-ins with the law, but nothing violent enough to hint at the encounter with Officer Daniels. The contrast between his calm, everyday life and the dangerous, almost theatrical flight from the officer made the case more perplexing. As investigators delved deeper, the community grew restless. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed he was mentally unstable. Others insisted he was part of a larger criminal network. Yet evidence suggested something far more personal and deliberate. Surveillance cameras from nearby streets provided glimpses of the man before and after the chase, revealing his knowledge of the town's layout and his ability to blend seamlessly into crowds when necessary. Each lead brought new questions. How could someone plan an escape so effectively without attracting attention? Why risk confrontation with law enforcement at all? The detective team worked tirelessly, analyzing every footprint, every surveillance frame, and every discarded item. The case evolved into a game of deduction, where anticipating the suspect's next move became the central challenge. As days turned into weeks, it became clear that capturing him would require more than just persistence. It would demand patience, strategy, and an understanding of a mind that thrived on chaos and evasion. The town watched, tense and anxious, as the story unfolded, knowing that the man who had vanished into the night was still out there, plotting his next move, and the next twist in this unfolding mystery was yet to come. Weeks passed, and the suspect remained a phantom in the town's underbelly, seemingly always one step ahead of law enforcement. Frustration grew among the officers, but just when the trail seemed cold, an unexpected lead emerged. A local jogger, running along the outskirts of town, noticed a man matching the suspect's description frequently entering a car repair shop. It was a nondescript building tucked behind a row of warehouses, the kind of place people passed by without a second thought. Officers moved quickly to investigate, only to find the man gone, but security footage captured his movements inside the shop, revealing a startling truth: he had been living a double life. By day, he appeared ordinary, working among mechanics, interacting politely with colleagues, blending seamlessly into society. By night, he transformed into the elusive figure who had confronted Officer Daniels, planning escapes and navigating the town's hidden corners. The discovery shocked the investigative team. Every step of the chase, every shortcut through alleys and tunnels, was no accident. The man's knowledge of the town was methodical, precise, and deeply ingrained. He had anticipated surveillance, officers' likely movements, and the layout of every street. The case began to shift from a simple pursuit to an examination of meticulous planning and hidden patterns. Investigators realized that the suspect's behavior was more calculated than impulsive. He was orchestrating a game with the police, always testing boundaries, gauging reactions, and leaving just enough traces to taunt those who followed him. The deeper the team dug, the more disturbing the picture became. Background checks revealed a life carefully constructed to avoid suspicion. Neighbors spoke of someone quiet, unassuming, who kept to himself. Friends described him as reliable, even likable. Yet, beneath this facade was a mind accustomed to evasion and manipulation. Every step of the escape, from the initial confrontation to the months of disappearance, had been premeditated, revealing an intelligence and patience that few expected from someone with his minor criminal record. The twist in the case changed the approach entirely. Instead of relying solely on patrols or random searches, officers began mapping behavioral patterns, predicting where he might appear next, and analyzing the subtle ways he interacted with the town's infrastructure. It was no longer just about catching a man, it was about understanding a mind that thrived on chaos, fear, and control. The town watched, uneasy. As the reality sank in, the man who had pulled a knife on an officer was not a reckless criminal. He was a strategist, a ghost moving unseen in plain sight, and the next encounter promised to be more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Months of surveillance, analysis, and careful planning finally led officers to a breakthrough. The suspect, confident in his ability to evade capture, made a critical miscalculation. Returning to a familiar street, one he had previously navigated during the initial chase, he failed to notice that the area had been under constant observation. Cameras, hidden in plain sight, tracked his movements, and officers quietly assembled in the shadows, waiting for the precise moment to act. The tension was almost unbearable. Every step he took seemed deliberate, calculated, yet this time, the officers had the advantage, turning the tables on the man who had so skillfully eluded them for months. As he reached a narrow alley, he realized too late that escape routes had been cut off. The net had closed. Officers approached carefully, their movements precise and measured. The suspect's hand twitched, a subtle indication of the knife he still carried. For a fleeting moment, time seemed suspended, the potential for violence hanging heavily in the air. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he surrendered. The knife was secured, the threat neutralized, and the town finally breathed a collective sigh of relief. Months of tension, fear, and uncertainty had come to a dramatic conclusion. The aftermath of the capture rippled through the community. Officer Daniels was commended for his bravery and quick thinking, his name etched into local headlines as the man who had faced danger head-on. Yet, the story left more than just relief, it left lingering questions. How had a seemingly ordinary man managed to live undetected while planning such a dangerous series of escapes? How could someone so familiar in the community harbor the capacity for calculated confrontation with law enforcement? The answers revealed a chilling reality. Appearances could be deceiving, and danger could lurk behind the most mundane facades. The suspect faced trial, and details of his actions emerged for the first time. Investigators presented the months of evidence, showing the meticulous planning, the double life, and the deliberate testing of police responses. The courtroom was captivated by the precision of his movements and the audacity of his strategy. Sentencing brought closure, but the community remained vigilant, forever altered by the experience. In the end, the case became more than a story of crime, it became a cautionary tale. The man who had once pulled a knife on an officer and vanished into darkness had challenged a town, tested its law enforcement, and left behind a narrative that would be remembered for years. It was a stark reminder that courage, vigilance, and preparation were sometimes the only shields against the unexpected, and that even the quietest streets could conceal the most dangerous secrets.